In 1793, a Parisian doctor opened a mattress to find out why his patient kept getting sicker. Inside, he discovered an ecosystem: bedbugs, lice, fleas, and the decomposed remains of a rat. But the real horror was what he didn't find. The mattress hadn't been opened in 40 years. Nobody had thought to look. This was normal. This was how everyone in Europe slept for centuries. And the bed, the most intimate object in your life, has one of the darkest histories of anything you own. The bed is the one piece of furniture you spend a third of your life on. You're born in one, you die in one, and you spend roughly 26 years lying on one in between. And for most of those 26 years, you have no idea what's happening while you sleep. The first beds weren't beds at all. 77,000 years ago, in the Sibudu cave in what is now South Africa, humans piled layers of sedge grass and aromatic leaves into shallow pits dug into cave floors. Archaeologists found these compressed layers, each about 3 centimeters thick, stacked on top of older ones, like geological strata of sleep. The leaves weren't random. They were Cryptocarya woody, a plant that naturally repels mosquitoes and other biting insects. Our ancestors were already fighting the same war we fight today. They just fought it with botany instead of chemistry. These grass beds had another feature. Periodically, the layers were burned. The inhabitants would set fire to their bedding, destroying accumulated parasites, then lay fresh leaves on top of the ash. Fire was their washing machine, their pest control, their reset button. It was crude but effective, and arguably more hygienic than anything Europe would manage for the next 70,000 years. Ancient Egypt elevated the bed, literally. Pharaohs and nobles slept on the raised wooden frames with woven cord or leather strap bases, lifted a foot or more off the ground. The elevation wasn't about comfort, it was about survival. Egypt's floors crawled with scorpions, snakes, spiders, and insects after dark. Sleeping on the ground meant risking a bite, or worse, before morning. The higher your bed, the safer you were. The rich slept high, the poor slept on the floor. And with that simple difference, the bed became the first physical marker of social class in human history. It has never stopped being one. Egyptian beds had another peculiarity: headrests instead of pillows. Carved from wood, ivory, or stone, these curved supports held the head above the sleeping surface. They look agonizingly uncomfortable to modern eyes, but they served a practical purpose. In Egypt's heat, raising the head allowed air to circulate, keeping the sleeper cooler. Some headrests were ornately carved with protective deities: Bes, the dwarf god who guarded sleepers, or Taweret, the hippo goddess of fertility. Sleep was dangerous. You needed divine protection to survive the night. The ancient Romans took the bed in a different direction. They had multiple types: the lectus cubicularis for sleeping, the lectus tricliniaris for dining, the lectus lucubratorius for reading and studying. The wealthy had beds with frames of bronze or carved wood, mattresses stuffed with feathers or wool, and coverlets dyed in expensive purple. Roman beds were status symbols. The more elaborate, the wealthier you appeared. But Romans also associated the bed with something darker. A Roman deathbed was a public event. The dying person was placed on a special bed in the atrium of the house, visible to all visitors. Death and sleep shared the same furniture. The god of sleep, Somnus, was the twin brother of the god of death, Thanatos. Romans understood what modernity tries to forget. The bed is where life is most vulnerable. But the true dark chapter began in medieval Europe. and it lasted over 1,000 years. For the vast majority of medieval Europeans, privacy was a concept that simply didn't exist. Homes were single room structures. The bed, if you could call it that, was a straw stuffed sack on the floor or on a simple wooden platform. Entire families, parents, children, grandparents, sometimes servants and animals shared this sleeping space. In winter, body heat was the primary heating system. The more bodies, the warmer the night. This arrangement had consequences. Infant mortality from overlying, a parent rolling onto and suffocating a baby during sleep, was so common that the Catholic Church issued decrees about it. Priests were instructed to warn parents against sleeping with infants. Some parishes required infants to sleep in a separate wooden frame called an arcuccio, essentially a protective cage placed beside the parent's bed. Whether this was purely accidental or sometimes intentional, a form of concealed infanticide in an era without contraception, historians still debate. The beds of the wealthy were scarcely safer, just larger. The Great Bed of Ware, built around 1590 for an English inn, was over 3 meters wide and 3 meters long. It could sleep 15 people and regularly did. Travelers shared beds with strangers as a matter of course. There was no embarrassment in it. You simply negotiated which side you'd sleep on and hoped your companion didn't snore, steal the covers, or carry plague. And plague was a real concern. Medieval mattresses were stuffed with straw, wool, horsehair, or whatever was cheaply available. They were never washed. The technology and the cultural inclination didn't exist. Over months and years, these mattresses accumulated sweat, blood, urine, bodily fluids, food crumbs, dead skin, and thriving colonies of insects. Bedbugs embedded themselves so deeply in the straw that they were considered a permanent feature, like the wood of the frame itself. Fleas laid eggs in the millions. Lice nested in every fiber. A popular saying of the era, "Good night, sleep tight, don't let the bedbugs bite," wasn't a children's rhyme, it was genuine survival advice. Sleep tight referred to the ropes that supported the mattress on the bed frame. They needed to be tightened regularly or the sleeper would sag through. And the bedbugs? There was nothing you could do about them. They were simply part of sleeping. Some mattresses became so infested that they would visibly move at night. Travelers documented this with horror and then slept on them anyway because there was no alternative. A 16th century German innkeeper's manual advised pouring boiling water over bed frames twice a year. Not to eliminate bugs, that was understood to be impossible, but to reduce their numbers enough that guests could sleep. The Industrial Revolution finally changed the bed, but the change was driven by disease, not comfort. The spring mattress wasn't invented because someone wanted a better night's sleep. It was invented because public health officials discovered that solid, undrained mattresses trapped moisture and created ideal breeding conditions for tuberculosis bacteria. Dr. James Paget published findings in 1870 showing that consumptive patients who slept on ventilated mattresses recovered faster than those on traditional stuffed ones. The spring mattress was a medical intervention. The coiled spring allowed air to circulate through the mattress, reducing moisture and bacterial growth. Comfort was a side effect of hygiene. Cotton replaced straw. Metal frames replaced wood, partly because metal harbored fewer insects. The concept of sheets, separate washable layers between body and mattress, became widespread only in the 19th century, driven by the germ theory of disease. Before that, you slept directly on whatever the mattress was made of. The 20th century brought foam, latex, and memory foam, each marketed as revolutionary comfort. But each was also a response to a hygiene problem. Foam doesn't harbor dust mites as readily as natural fibers. Memory foam, developed by NASA in the 1960s, was adapted for hospital beds to reduce pressure sores in immobile patients before it ever reached a consumer bedroom. Today, the average mattress contains between 100,000 and 10 million dust mites. Each mite produces about 20 droppings per day. Over the lifespan of a mattress, typically 8 to 10 years, it gains weight. Not from wear, but from accumulated dead skin cells, dust mite feces, sweat residue, and fungal spores. A 10-year-old mattress can weigh measurably more than when it was new. You are never alone in your bed. You never have been. And the most unsettling part? We still haven't solved the fundamental problem our ancestors faced in Sibudu cave 77,000 years ago. They burned their beds to kill what lived inside them. We can't do that. We rotate our mattresses, we buy protectors, we vacuum occasionally, but the bed remains what it has always been: a warm, dark, moist environment that attracts exactly the kind of life you don't want sharing your sleep. The bed was never safe. It was simply the least dangerous place to close your eyes. And every morning you wake up, whether in a cave in South Africa, a medieval inn in England, or a memory foam in a modern apartment, you've survived another night in the oldest battlefield in human history.